Howdy folks, welcome back to the Metal Mill 52 workshop, and I guess I should make this the announcement of my new project. I'm going to do another thing on the Quorn. I'll talk about that in just a second. Not really ready to kick off the full-blown project, just declared victory on the universal pillar tool here. As I've mentioned before, I believe I do have a complete set of Quorn castings that I believe these actually came from England, and we'll talk more about that later. I've kind of mocked up the base here. But as you know, when I made the ball handles for the pillar tool, I made a set, since I had the equipment out, I went ahead and made a set for the Quorn as well. There's large and small and a couple of different bases. But I thought in light of my idea about preparing for the Quorn, I'd go ahead and make the column. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'll film this in a couple of segments, but I've got a piece of 1¼ 303 stainless steel, and I'm going to try something kind of unique. I'm going to mill the vertical slot, the 3/32 inch vertical slot in it that's 3/32 of an inch deep. And I'm going to go down 2 inches, and then I'm going to mill the spiral in the middle section, the middle 6 3/4 inches of the column. And reason I'm doing that, the head for the wheel head assembly is like 2 1/4 inches tall, so you really don't need a spiral there. The purpose of the spiral is for an adjusting wheel that supports the wheel head as you adjust the height of the wheel head and motor assembly. So you don't really have to have one, but I'm going to try this because years ago a gentleman named Michael Wirth, W-I-R-T-H, published a unique idea about doing the column on the mill in a spindex. And what he does is advance the table 4/1000ths of an inch and then turns the column by 2 degrees. And he does that over and over and over again. I calculated it out. If I'm milling a 8 3/4 inch center section with the spiral, it's basically going to be about 1,530 of those advances of 4 thou and rotate 2 degrees. So it's going to be a lot. And then I figured out, this is kind of interesting, but I figured, well, if it takes me 10 seconds for each cut, that's 255 minutes, or about 4 1/4 hours of milling that spiral. So we'll see how it goes. I'm at very least, I'll get the center column done, get the center mill in there that helps align things, and then I'll try to mill the spiral. And what I've got here, I've got it set up in the machine. I just went ahead and I spent several evenings this week carefully centering my spindex on the mill, and that was a lot easier way easier said than done. I didn't use the little 3-jaw in here. I actually had different size collets. I did it with 1/2 inch and 3/4 inch, and I used some drill rod and steel pieces that I know, basically like test bars, and then I ran it back and forth, and just tweaked the adjustment on the hold down on the spindex. My spindex is a phase 2, which is a pretty decent quality import, but unlike a really nice American model, this like Suburban makes, the sides are not milled and ground perpendicular, parallel to the axis. So you can't just plop it in the vise. That was my first desire, just to plop it in the vise and off you go. Then it'd automatically be aligned, because if the vise is already trimmed with the mill. But I used 2 hold down clamps over on one side and a third on the other to give me 3 points of contact. Then I have my little very handy 3-jaw chuck in the mill, and I've got it sitting in a V-block, a very sturdy V-block, which is also clamped down, as you can see over here. And I chalked the V-block up very carefully to make sure that the column is perfectly supported and parallel with the table. So having said all that, I've got a 3/32 inch cutter ready to go. I'll be putting that in, and milling the center column portion down, and then I'm going to try to very carefully over the course of many hours see if I can mill the spiral in. So that's the plan, and I will keep you posted in the next segment. Everybody in Metal Mill 52, segment 2 on making the Quorn column. Well, this has been interesting. I have successfully milled an 1/8" slot in the Quorn column now. It's a 303 stainless. I broke a couple of cutters. That's why I ended up going to the 1/8", because I broke off my one and only 3/32 inch cutter pretty early on in the process, and I realized one big mistake was leaving this end loose. I realized the cutter broke because the piece was vibrating a little bit, even though it's held securely in the 3-jaw chuck, and I had erroneously assumed that the weight of the column would be enough to keep it steady, even because I was only taking off 15/1000ths of an inch. But now you can see I've got luckily the V-block has a clamp, and I've put a new bolt in there, a shorter bolt, so I could get closer to it. So I did it in 2 sections actually. That's what the little magic marker here, the Sharpie marker is. I did this first, and then when I finished getting that down to 3/32 inch depth, then I moved the whole block up, clamped it down. It's clamped again. Sorry about the camera work there. So it's clamped sturdy, and now I'm in the interest of science, I am willing to try at least to make the spiral. I was tempted not to, but you know, what the heck, let's give it a try. I'm going to try to do this at full depth. So I've backed off the depth. I actually milled the slot down to 100 thou. So I've backed it off 7 thou, so it's 93/1000ths into it, and we got a high RPM setting, about 3,900 RPM on the tiny little cutter, and I'm going to see. You know, we'll know pretty quickly whether this is going to work or not. So I will post another segment that has the interesting results. So again, we're advancing the x-axis 4/1000ths and using the spin index just to move this over 2 degrees. So I'm going to cross my fingers and hope it works. I'm going to move this up and start it at the 2 1/4 inch mark from the end, because the motor head, the wheel head, spindle guide, whatever it is, it's 2 1/4 inches tall, so you don't really need the spiral all the way, as long as we have the slot here to get the lug into the spiral down there. So this will be interesting. I'll keep you posted. Hey folks, segment 3 of the Quorn milling the spiral, and it's coming out really well. I am glad that I pursued the interest of science. I've been at this for several hours now, and but I'm taking my time. You know, there's just listening to music, listening to television, and relaxing and enjoying the process. I'm stopping. There's the DRO. I started at the 2 1/4 inch stage, so I've gotten a little bit more than 2 inches done, and I'm going to stop for the evening here. I'm going to leave everything sit just like it is, but it's really, you get in a little rhythm that just moving, you know, unlock the x-axis, move it 4/1000ths, and then come over here and spin the spin index for 2/1000ths, or it's 2 degrees rather, and it makes a nice little pile. You can see the material getting done. If you, interesting point, to keep things from vibrating, I have this loosely on with a piece of copper. It's enough where the column can spin without a problem, you know, when I rotate it as I advance the degrees, but it does keep a little bit of pressure on the edge there. So that seems to be working out pretty well. And I've stopped a couple times just to take a breather, and I've got my key chuck here handy. I've made sure to tighten up the 3-jaw chuck on there, because you don't want that coming loose and messing up your spiral shape. So it's coming along pretty well. I just have to go to about here, so I think another few hours and I'll be able to completely machine the thing. So it's an 1/8 inch wide cutter, about 3/8 of an inch, about 93 thousandths and 3/8, about 3/32 of an inch deep, and it seems to be going pretty well. I'm keeping it lubricated, got some cutting oil here, and I've had to spray the spin index. I'm not sure why it's getting tight, but I've sprayed it down with WD-40 a couple of times. Maybe I need to put some whey oil in there or something. But it's so far so good. Maybe I'll be able to wrap this thing up tomorrow. Hey everybody, I thought I'd show the actual process of the manual numeric control. It's painstakingly slow but very effective. So, excuse me, watch. Having to speak loud to go over the machine. Let me get a drink of water here. Moving the x-axis, so I got 8.684, so going to 8.688, really slowly here. There we go. I'm locking the x-axis. I'm moving the pin 2 degrees on the spindex. Taking my little handle here, put my left hand on the pin. I just gradually easy move that, rotate the spindle, and press the pin in. Go a little bit more. I'm almost done here. So 688 going to 692. Pin 2 degrees, press the pin in, rotate the spindle, you can see it cut, looking good, 92 going to 96, lock it in, move 2 degrees, rotate the spindle, press the pin in, put a little oil on the cutter. The cutter is at about 92 thousandths depth, 93 thousandths, 3/32 of an inch. I'm just going to go down to where it lines up with the horizontal line. You probably can't see that, but just go a couple more. So 696 going to 8.70. Nice and easy, very gradual. I'm going for a thou here. Pull the pin out, move it over, rotate the spindle, just a couple more. If you'd like to watch, I'll just keep you tuned in. 704 is our target. Going nice and easy because the cutter is at full depth and I don't want to break it. Lock it in, move the spindex 2 degrees, rotate the spindle, press the pin in. I always wait, I only stop after I've rotated and locked the pin, so now I know the next thing to do is to move the x-axis. 4 going to 8. There we go. 2 degrees. Rotate very gently. You can really feel the cutter cutting. That's why I rotate really easy. Alright, 1 or 2 more and we'll be all done. 708, 712. Lock it in, 4 degrees, 1 to 6 degrees. Press the pin, rotate the spindle, oil the spindle. 712 down to 716. Lock it. 6 to 8 degrees over here. Rotate the spindle nice and easy. Good. I'm almost there, y'all. I think 1 or 2 more at the most. I just figured I might as well go for it while I got it going, you know. I don't want to never have to redo this because it has taken forever. My time estimate, I hope y'all can hear this. My time estimate was way short. Have it. Alright folks, cut the machine off. You'll still be able to hear the rotary phase converter in the background, but I'll stop the video in a second here. This is 5 minutes, so just wanted to show the rig in action. If you can see this, let me look in the, yeah. So there's the locking collar. I put a piece of flattened copper pipe in here. It's loose enough for the column to spin, but tight enough to keep a little pressure on it, keep it from vibrating. I was using some Vectra 2 whey oil here to lubricate the top of the column, and every once in a while I would spray some WD-40 on the straw here to clear some of the chips away. And as you can see, I was also using my chip brush here with some cutting oil on it very frequently, keeping it cutting, because I was at full depth with the 1/8 inch cutter. Let me go ahead and pull that up. There we go. And happily I was able to complete the whole column and not break this cutter. I broke a couple of others. I broke a 3/32. I think I broke a 1/8 inch before I figured out that I needed to keep a little pressure on the column to keep it from vibrating. But that's 303 stainless, and the Quorn column is done, and I'm very happy about that. I'm going to go ahead and cut the video off, take this all out, wipe it down, and I'll show you the finished product before I close out the video for tonight. Alright folks, I'll wrap up this segment on the Quorn column. I am really ecstatic about how this came out. Very big thanks to Michael Wirth, W-I-R-T-H, for publishing this idea. Here it is. It's 1.25 inch solid stainless steel, 303 grade, and beautiful turned ground polished shaft that I got off of eBay. And I've milled the, I don't know if you can see that very well, but yeah, the vertical slot. I used an 1/8 inch cutter, 1/8 inch end mill all the way down, and just went down this is the top 2 inches. 2.25 inches, I didn't bother putting a spiral on that because the wheel head itself is that height. So the spiral controls a little height adjustment gauge, or not a gauge, but a nut basically that has a pin in it, and so I didn't bother putting that in the top 2.25 inches. But the rest of it is a spiral at about 3/4 inch, 0.72 is the exact math on it. It came out great. It was really interesting and very time consuming to do, but very pleased with the results. And I'll say this much, if you can buy one of these already machined for a reasonable price, definitely consider it, because it was very time consuming. It took me probably twice as many hours as I thought. I bet it was at least 8 hours of total machining time. Maybe more like 10 when you add the probably 10 when you add the time cutting the spiral in there, and that probably doesn't count the setup time that I did last week. So anyway, it's done. What I need to do is, I can feel a very sharp edge along here, so I'm going to take it apart, or not take it apart. I'll take a deburring tool to it, maybe even put it in the lathe, because I do want to finish the edges, the ends, and I could possibly deburr it or kind of polish it up in the lathe a little bit, but we'll see about that. And I'll do an official kickoff project my game plan is, now that I've got the column done, there's no excuse to wait any longer, because this is one of the things that was holding me up. I'll get some money together and order a couple of pieces of 1-inch 303 stainless like this that I can use for the vertical bars, and then the machining of those is very simple. One of them just gets cleaned up, the other one gets a hole bored in it, and the back one is solid, and the front one is a little bit shorter, and it has a hole bored in it for a spring. So I'll have to order those, and once I get those and finish those, then I can get into the machining of the castings and so forth. So once again, folks, welcome to the new subscribers. I saw that we picked up a couple more today. Very excited about that. If you're interested in building the Quorn, let me tell you about a couple of resources. There's one that's a guy named Dan Hill. Hill's Gun is his website, and he's got some great videos of actually using his Quorn to sharpen some end mills and other things. He actually started a project of building an oversized Quorn. So very, very cool that he did that. And there's another YouTube channel that I've just joined, and it's a gentleman, by his accent, I'm judging he's in Australia, New South Wales, something like that. But it's called Matty's Workshop, M-A-T-T-Y''S, Matty's Workshop. And it looks like he started with, looks like somebody named Nelson gave him a finished Quorn base. So he's done the tool head and the wheel head and the spindle, so kind of the end of the project. And he's done a real nice job, and shows his videos are way better than mine as far as the technology. He's not clearly not shooting from an iPhone in a clip stuck to a Starrett magnetic base indicator holder like I am right now. So his language is colorful, and his videos are very interesting. So check out Matty's Workshop. And Matty, thank you for your I commented on one of his most recent videos, and he was kind enough to comment back, so I appreciate that. And again, appreciate all the support and encouragement from all the fellow hobbyists out there. So without any further ado, I will look forward to talking to you later. Have a great week.